I'm sorry if I sound kind of annoyed while I'm, recording this because this is the second time I've had to do this because despite the fact I had my microphone up, I went through 20 minutes of reacting to this article and going over it only for there to be no audio. So, anyways, uh, Lance made me aware of this article. He shared it on his Twitter, and I kind of wanted to go over it. All right, for those of you, of course, who are paying attention to Kenobi, um, the Grand Inquisitor will be getting his live-action debut. And, of course, when I saw what he looked like, he doesn't really look that faithful to how he was in Rebels. Like, they could have made his head a little bit taller and all, but they didn't. And I was like, alright, that's fine, but my main concern was, are they going to get the character right personality-wise and faithful to how he was in Rebels? And unfortunately, this headline concerns me. Kind of concerns me. This article is written by Savannah Sanders, and Star Wars' new Grand Inquisitor actor purposely avoided watching Rebels. And that's a concern because I'm worried about his faithful personality portrayal. So anyway, the article starts off by saying, are there more villains in Lucasfilm's new Disney Plus series than heroes? Leading up to the premiere of Obi-wan Kenobi, that certainly appears to be the case. In addition to the much anticipated return of Hayden Christensen as Darth Vader, and I actually am kind of looking forward to that because despite what people say, I think Hayden Christensen actually did a decent job as Anakin. So anyway, going on, Obi-Wan will face Inquisitors played by Moses Ingram and Sung Kang. And leading his crew of Jedi Hunters is the Grand Inquisitor from Star Wars Rebels, who's making the jump from animation into live action for the first time. Inquisitors were first introduced in Star Wars Rebels as Force-sensitive beings who are affiliated with the Sith. Not only are they tasked with Darth Vader to wipe out any surviving Jedi, but they are responsible for locating any Force-sensitive children throughout the galaxy. Okay, the writer of the article got something wrong here. The Inquisitors were not first introduced in Rebels. In the new canon they were, but they were not introduced in Star Wars first in Rebels. They were first introduced. I think they were first mentioned just by name in the Marvel comics, and then the the West End Games role-playing guides defined what the Inquisitorius was, and of course the EU expanded on them and brought them in. So that's one thing you got wrong, Savannah. They were not first introduced in Rebels. Since Obi-Wan Kenobi is watching over Luke Skywalker and Tatooine, that puts him on a collision course with the Grand Inquisitor and his affiliates in more ways than one. Rupert Friend was the actor chosen to portray the live-action incarnation of the Grand Inquisitor. And now, just days away from the premiere of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the actor isn't just sharing how he prepared for the role, but also what he didn't do. And this is the big concern. Obi-Wan's Grand Inquisitor didn't watch Star Wars Rebels. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Rupert Friend discussed how he prepared for the role of the Grand Inquisitor in Obi-Wan Kenobi and why he avoided watching Star Wars Rebels, saying, I almost deliberately did not see the animated interpretation. And why didn't he do that? That's the big concern here. And he said, I really wanted to honor the character as I saw him, so I deliberately did not see the animated interpretation. Myself and director Deb Chow and writer Dave Filoni and all the other guys really wanted to do something fresh that honored and was faithful to the spirit of the character without doing a kind of impression of anybody else's interpretation. In Star Wars Rebels, the Grand Inquisitor was voiced by Jason Isaacs, and Jason Isaacs did a really great job as him. And I didn't mention this earlier, but I don't remember if I did, but the Grand Inquisitor was one of the best things to come out of Rebels, and he was threatening and more competent than TCW Grievous was. So anyway, and just like Obi-Wan Kenobi is tasked with hunting down Order 66 survivors in the show's first season, he serves as Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger's primary antagonist. When asked about creating the voice for the villain, especially since he wasn't familiar with Isaac's works, Friend explained it came from the fact that the Inquisitor is a being who enjoys the sound of his own voice. It was interesting because, as I say, I deliberately did not want to sort of use anybody else's interpretation of the character. So it was really something that I felt very instinctively when I read the script. And one of the lines that Joby Harold, the writer, had written was when the Grand Inquisitor speaks, he's a being who enjoys the sound of his own voice. He's one of those guys who, if you didn't stop him, would just talk and talk and talk. And I'm not giving away anything by saying we're going to experience that in the show. He has this very juicy way of enjoying himself. And I just thought, what does the guy who enjoys the sound of his voice, or his own voice, sound like? And that's what we got. So in a way, he kind of likes to monologue to himself, sort of like Londo Malari from Babylon 5, if you've seen that show. I guess that's what he's trying to go for. While the Grand Inquisitor is a villain in both Obi-Wan and Star Wars Rebels, he didn't start off that way. Much like Obi-Wan, he's a former Jedi and was even a member of the Temple Guard from Star Wars The Clone Wars, where he escorted Ahsoka from the temple and served during Barriss Offee's trial. His surprising and complicated history is explained in the second season of Star Wars Rebels, where his redeemed spirit helps Kanan Jarrus become a full Jedi Knight. That's another thing you got wrong. Writer of this article, that was not his redeemed spirit. That was just an illusion created that was Yoda doing it. And his spirit was not redeemed. He was, he became a dark side Force ghost and fought Luke Skywalker, which again, sorry, my headphones turned off. I don't know why these headphones turn off when you don't use it for a while. So anyway, as I was saying before I got interrupted, like I said, he was a dark side Force ghost, and Darksiders are not supposed to be able to do that. So that's another contradiction we have here in the new canon. So that's and also another thing you got wrong. And as the article continues, as to his Jedi background, Friend wouldn't say if the Grand Inquisitor's personal history will play a part in Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, the actor is aware of it, and he claims it really helped me, and that it brought an enormous kind of feeling of power beneath the performance. All will be revealed in a couple of weeks, but I can say it really helped me to have as my backstory this sense of awesome power and knowledge where he is effectively hunting the folks he once was. So he has all this insider information on him, and on the way that they might fight or evade capture, that has just brought an enormous kind of feeling of power beneath the performance. Lastly, Rupert Friend addressed the current Disney Plus crossover trend and whether his character would be part of the new tradition, admitting that he would be completely open to it, as it would be thrilling. Now, I'll say I really do think it makes more sense for the Grand Inquisitor to appear in live action instead of having these other pointless, shoved in cameos. Because, he's an Inquisitor. It makes sense for him to be in this. So anyway, as the quote continues, or the quoting continues, well, it's a really good point because one of the things I'm loving about seeing the Star Wars universe unfold and expanding is that crossover thing. Seeing characters who are in a limited world are crossing over into a movie or back into a game, even. And I think the characters are so thoroughly created and exciting to watch that the world lends itself to that sort of crossover. So I would be completely open to it. I love playing that part and would love to see what happened if he were to interact, or if you read his kind of timeline. There are some really fascinating things where he is turned into a hologram and he decides to jump to his own death because he says that there's some things that are worse than death, referencing Vader's punishment. Now obviously our period doesn't cover that. So if they decide to explore that, I think that would be pretty thrilling. Well, you got another thing wrong here. I'm not the writer of the article, but the actor. He was not a hologram. He was a dark side Force ghost. And again, it makes no sense because they established that Darksiders can't do that, but he's doing that in the new canon. See, that's the biggest problem with the new canon. They cannot get things consistent. They constantly contradict themselves. So as the article continues, Obi-Wan Kenobi's other fallen enemy. Anytime an actor or creator chooses to not familiarize themselves with the work that came before, it's startling and even disappointing. And that's true because he should at least familiarize himself with how he appeared. Like, even if he doesn't try to copy Jason Isaacs, he's got to still familiarize himself. And after all, fans want continuity in their characters and storytelling, which I really do, and I do agree with that. I want continuity, even though the new canon is doing not really that great of a job with it. They're just not doing a good job with that continuity. So anyway, considering the Grand Inquisitor's rich layered history in Star Wars Rebels, along with Jason Isaacs' masterful voice performance, it's hard to imagine Rupert Friend being unaware of that in his portrayal. And like I said, it's disappointing that he's not going to do that. However, his comment about not wanting to do a kind of impression goes a long way in explaining his reasoning. For the sake of the show itself, it's probably the right call. His particular role calls for a dramatic performance, not mimicry or imitation. And if he can do that dramatic performance and his charisma and threatening, portrayal, I hope he does it. I'm just so worried that they're not going to capture that in the show. But even though Friend hasn't seen Rebels, it's great to hear that he's familiar with his character's past and future, and that it contributed to his performance. While fans won't know until the show airs, it's worth noting that he didn't deny the possibility of the grand past being part of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay, I'm glad at least Rupert Friend is at least somewhat familiar with the character's history, so he can go off of that. So it gives me a little bit of hope there. And as the article continues, even though the contrast of Kanan Jarrus and the Grand Inquisitor's past in Star Wars Rebels was fascinating, it would be even more so with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Not only was the Grand Inquisitor a friend and colleague of the Jedi Master, and another instant betrayal, but his dark path also mirrors that of Anakin. Okay, if I remember, the Grand Inquisitor and Obi-Wan never interacted. The material established never said they were friends. And his path is like Anakin's. If I remember correctly, the Grand Inquisitor was frustrated that the Jocasta Nu wouldn't give him access to the archives, study the history and stuff, because she thought he was he's a poor academic, and that's what caused him to fall. So I don't really see what the writer's talking about. Let's continue with the article. Finally, while Friend didn't give anything away in terms of his character returning to another Lucasfilm project, he certainly seems familiar with the current trend of Star Wars cameos and crossovers, as is the fact he's open to it. And with Andor and Ahsoka on the horizon, there's definitely an opportunity. Okay. It doesn't really make sense for him to be part of Andor, because by the time of that show, he would have been defeated by Kanan, so he wouldn't be alive. And it's definitely not Ahsoka, because Ahsoka takes place after Return of the Jedi, and unless they did a flashback with him, I can maybe see, but not him appearing in the show. unless his ghost appeared. And honestly, I would like to see the Grand Inquisitor in other material, like have him appear as a character, like an encounter for Cal Kestis to fight in Jedi, the Jedi Fallen Order secret. Like, I would love that, and have Jason Isaacs voice the character again. That would be great. And so the end of the article says, in the meantime, the Grand Inquisitor's live-action debut is only days away, and from what has been shown in the trailers and TV spots, the showdown between Vader and Kenobi isn't the only action fans can look forward to. So I guess, is the Grand Inquisitor going to fight Obi-Wan? And to be honest, the Grand Inquisitor would get completely just steamrolled by Obi-Wan, because the Grand Inquisitor can only, like, the Grand Inquisitor can easily fight, you know, your average Padawan and your low-level Jedi Knight, and easily take on Jedi Knights and low-level Jedi Masters like Jocasta Nu, but he's not going to be able to fight and compete with Obi-Wan. Unless they get the power levels inconsistent, which, given how the new canon handles things, I could see that. But anyway, I am cautiously optimistic. I'm sort of worried that, you know, not only did he get his looks wrong, but they'll also get his personality wrong. And I don't want to have to be like, look how they massacred my boy, like in that meme video I made, if you haven't seen it. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on that, and Lance, if you're watching, thank you for sharing this article so it could come to my attention. And are you looking forward to Obi-Wan Kenobi? I'm cautiously optimistic, but let me know your thoughts on this, and your thoughts if you're looking forward to Obi-Wan, and I'll see you whenever I make another video. Take care, people.